Non-dual is a Sanskrit word that means not two, nothing more. So really, that's what it means. But then you have these interpretations, and it's been described as Neo-Advaita non-duality, meaning it's kind of an interpretation of interpretation of interpretation, where they begin to say, oh, well, there is no body, you're an illusion, you don't exist, that sort of thing. But what we want to do is point you back down to the essence, point you back down to where we describe that this oneness, this all-knowing, this oneness it's all-knowing, it knows everything, but it has no experience. So we are the expressions that extend up from this knowing in order to have an experience, in order to perceive, in order to experience, to love, to laugh, to cry, to feel.
So this is a visual representation of what Jules is talking about. So you have the clayness, or consciousness, or God, or whatever you like to call it. And we just do an infinity sign to try and represent that. I mean, to be honest, any drawing or word, what did Rumi say? The language of God is silence, everything else is a poor translation.
Yes.
So this is a poor translation because we're having to give form to something that has no form, but again, bear with us. So say this is the essence, the clayness, the God, consciousness. Now, people, little eyeball. Now, a person, this is an eyeball here. It's not a fried egg. I'll put some lashes on that. There you go. Which is still part of God. It's the human is just the consciousness humaning, okay, in apparent separateness. So here you've got the clay, here you've got the pot. The pot in its necessary and inevitable and damn helpful a lot of the time sense of separation looks back at itself, seeing that, it's seeing its godness, its clayness, its consciousness, has an experience of this, and then they go, wow, this looks like this. This is God, this is consciousness. And they start talking about it. It's a square and it's got four corners and it's like this and it's like that. Someone else, little eyeball, could have an experience of going back home and go, it's circular, there's no corners, it's round, it's beautiful, it's whole. And then someone else can have an experience of themselves, of their larger selves, if you want to use those words. Go, wow, it's like a star, it's beautiful, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, it has 5 corners, and it's got all these arms, and so now you've got the fact of the essence, or the fact of the clayness, our origination, our commonality, our sameness, of the non-form, it's formless. Then, these are arrows, by the way, terrible arrows. We put a form to the formless and we call it a teaching. We call that non-duality, we call that the Tao, we call that wholality, or whatever name you want to put on it. Now, that isn't that. That is an interpretation of that. Now, what we want to do is we don't want to point you to wholality or the Tao or non-duality or whatever teaching you follow. We want to take you to that before the teaching, before our or anyone else's interpretation. How do you do that? experiential. Again.
Embracing your uniqueness, knowing that you might get to the forum and describe certain things and it may look different to what other people are saying. Honor that. That is a gift. That is the gift of uniqueness, of perspective, of 7.8 billion unique perspectives, not including animals and bumblebees. But honor that, because that's this. That is consciousness experiencing, consciousness humaning, love having the gift of experience.
Beautiful. So one other thing I want to do as a metaphor here is this essence is not as if this formlessness then creates a separate person. So this essence creates a little man, or this essence creates a tree, or this essence creates a universe. In my experience, it doesn't really work like that. It's more intimate than that. What happens, from my experience, is this great nothingness, no thing formless, births, becomes, resonates within itself a seemingly separateness. And we're going to talk more about why the separateness is so important and necessary, and it's not a big deal at all, seeing the nature of it. Within consciousness is a little man, within consciousness is the tree, within consciousness is the universe. So there's nothing outside of this. Everything is within. And so the great beforeness, which is the no thing, is concurrently creating what we call the afterness, which is everything, but the everything is within and not even connected, but part of, entangled within the no thing. So you can't have a separate person here. This is non-duality, not two. There isn't this number one and Bruce here, number two. There's no duality here. But why we teach wholality, and this is more apparent in our second month, the nature of experience, is we're saying that Bruce here, although Bruce is seemingly separate from the one, he's having his own very real experience. We, you, me, us, all of us are having a very real, unique, powerful, meaningful experience within one consciousness. It's not as if we don't exist, we're not real, it's, the self doesn't exist. We don't like teaching that, because I think it can be misinterpreted and it's very disempowering for people, from my personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way. It's a beautiful, like I say, it's love giving the gift of experience. We have the gift of experience via this process, via this alchemy that takes place. And I think in one place I described it's like the water and the rain gives the exquisite viewing of the rainbow. Like we cannot have an experience without the seeming separateness. And the seeming separateness could not exist without the oneness, without the aliveness, without that one power enlivening us.
It's a bit like a tree. You've got this tree coming up. Now, the tree looks separate from the ground because it's way above the ground. But it's within the ground. So there's not two, the roots and the crown. There's just the whole tree, both in one. You look at physics. There's particles and there's waves. And before Einstein, they used to think energy and matter and energy were two distinctly different things. And they found, actually, a wave is a particle and a particle is a wave concurrently. In the book, we do the duck and the rabbit. And actually, I'll put that up as a graphic now. When you look at this, you can see either a duck or you can see a rabbit. And if you keep looking, you realize that your visual range is shifting, and sometimes it's a duck, and then you can kind of reframe your eyes and then it looks like a rabbit, and it flips between either of them. Now, you can't see both of them concurrently. You see one or the other. Now, the nature of consciousness is a bothness at the same time. But in the human perceptual experience, we see one or the other. So we seem to be separate, but there's nothing that isn't already clay.
Right.
So again, we talk more about this in the book. We do more metaphors and more examples around our concurrent wholeness, the duck and the rabbit wave particle. So have a read of that. But we want to shift gears. There isn't, absolutely speaking, there isn't duality, meaning there's nothing that's separate from this one consciousness. But relatively speaking, there has to be a sense of duality for experience to exist. No sense of duality, no experience.
And you said sense of duality, meaning the sense of a seeming separateness, not a separateness.
Yes,
so
perfect.
The sense of it, it's necessary for us to experience this seeming separateness, for us to have experience.
Yeah, like no sense of separateness, no experience.
Right.
Because you would just be pure consciousness, and it wouldn't be able to experience, look back at itself, because there'll be no sense of a separation to do that. So we're going to talk about this more in the next lesson, but we're not saying, this is what we're not saying. We're not saying you don't exist. We're not saying that you're just a story. We're not saying that everything in the form isn't real. What we are saying is that you are real. You do exist. You are a beautiful, 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 unique aspect of this whole. You are God manifest, walking around in human form. And your life and you do matter within, intimately, in a love embrace with God. That's what we're saying.